really good base of operations. And I think was it 4 months we operated in the bib from.
And we started it, didn't we, with a friend of yours, a rather well-known actress called Rosamund Pike. You persuaded to join us, and we projected the Ukrainian flag on the Russian consulate in London, didn't we? And started a fundraising campaign. And then you and I went out there to see how we were going to spend the money.
Yeah, I think that was a marvellous stunt. I'm pretty sure that it was a building full of rather angry Russian diplomats at that time, because as the projection went up and the Ukrainian colours appeared, you could see someone running around the embassy going like, "Turn the lights out, pretend we're not in." We're not bothered. So I think that was a nice kick-off. We got the funds to get the program up and running.
Yeah. Well, led by donkeys went and painted the road. We didn't think of that, did we? Did you see that?
We'll come up with another one.
But the important part for that, and our motivation for doing that, of course, was the journalists that had been killed. Rather particularly a friend of both of us called Pierre Zakhareski, who was killed when a Russian shell landed on his car. It killed him. It killed his Ukrainian producer, and very badly very badly injured his reporter. And at that point, 8 journalists had been killed. And of course, the number now, I think, is what, more 17 or more?
I think it's 17 was the latest count that I had.
So we were protesting about the manner in which journalists were endangered, and of course, the free flow of information in this conflict is of considerable importance, and we had judged that by training these people, because they have such a key role in that output, local journalists, not only do they very often work with, some of you may well be journalists in this room, so you'll know, or online, you'll know this as well as we do, but they have a central role, one in working with our journalists, often translating for them, but also providing some of the best journalism out of a conflict like this, and so it's absolutely essential to keep them safe.
I mean, it has to be said that the field producers and effectors, I would say, without them, there would be no international news as such. They really are the oil on the wheels that make this whole show possible. Just being on that front, you need that local knowledge, you need that experience, and I just salute them people who do that, because they're never really recognised. They're always in the background.
Now, since you're doing all the work for this, how are you actually finding the training? How are you finding the Ukrainian journalists, and are they doing well? Do you know many of them have used the skills that you've given them?
These guys are fantastic. They're very young. Most of them are young. Keen to support the country, keen to get the news out, and they respond fantastically to the training. I'm almost, once they've passed on from the training, so what we do is we do a day's hostile environment training, which is, surviving the front line. It's basic things like getting through checkpoints, protection, what to do when you come under attack, what to do if you're taken prisoner. It's quite a comprehensive course, squeezed down and tailored for Ukraine. I've been out the front quite a few times just to get a feel for it. There's no point in sitting there trying to teach them about the last war that I covered. But their response is fantastic, and we do a full 9-hour day of that, and then the next 2 days we're doing combat first aid and casualty evacuation. But I continually get calls from them, online messages saying, we're planning this route. Could you have a look at it? Is this have we planned it right? What do you think this situation is? So there's a nice network grown up out of the course. I'll answer that phone 24 hours a day if need be. If they're calling, then we're there for them.
So you become a support service for 200 local journalists. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great that they've got the confidence to call and check things out and to run things by me. It's a sign that something's sunk in.
Can you tell us some of the other things you've done? Because obviously you've had to. I mean, the war you did before was Syria, and you suffered horrible injuries and have had to recover from them. And you've gone to ensure that you're completely up to date, so that you've been to Bakhmut, you've been to Chernihiv. You've just got a story out from Chernihiv, haven't you, which we put on our website?
Yeah. The first trip I did out east was to Bakhmut, which at the time it was Solidar and Bakhmut, pretty small city of about 10,000 residents in Donbass, and for reasons that are not clear to many people, the Russians seem to have focused their winter offensive on taking the town of Bakhmut. And Zelensky publicly said, "We will not let Bakhmut fall." So it is as close, I would say, as you would get to a kind of almost a First World War situation. You've got trenches, you've got these relentless artillery battles going on, and thrown into the mix, you have the high-tech warfare, which is the drones. So it's almost like a new hybrid war. It's old meets high technology, and it's quite it's an incredibly hostile place to be. So I was kind of looking to see what was happening there, and boy, did I find it in Bakhmut that certainly is a place, and it's still going on. I think the winter offensive seemed to focus on Bakhmut. Spring is coming, and there's a potential Ukrainian offensive coming up. The focus may shift, but that's been the main thing for this winter.
Could you describe what morale is like? How do you find the morale, and how are the Ukrainians coping with this? And when we spoke before, you said that there's a real difference between what it's like in the east and say back in Kyiv.
Yeah, I mean, look, back in Kyiv, it was hard over winter. The Russians tried to freeze and cut off the electricity supplies with a lot of drone attacks in Kyiv. Well, the drones can reach all over, so their idea was to freeze the Ukrainians over winter with long-range missiles and the drones. That seems to have failed, and morale in Kyiv is quite high. You can go out at night and go to one of the many bars, and you would be forgiven for not noticing it. However, the moment you start moving east and you start driving through where the Russians were, through Kharkiv, through Izium, and you end up in Donbass, then the situation deteriorates completely. There is no forgetting the war exists there. That's most of the villages and cities on that front line. I seem to have lost you there, man. Most of the villages on that front line are absolutely destroyed. But the forces in the trenches, given what they've been through, their morale, I would say, is we are going to finish this job, and really it is at a high cost. But there's no sense of defeatism, especially around the intense battle areas. There is a sense of, yes, this is costing lives, but Zelensky is not in any move to compromise, and it's one of the few wars I've covered where the backing of the Ukrainian people is almost total. I think 87%.
Well, so Zelensky is very popular still. You read a little bit here about some dissent. For example, there were public arguments that came out about whether they should have stayed in Bakhmut and defended or pulled out. How do those manifest? And do you feel there's any challenge to Zelensky or any doubts about him amongst Ukrainians?
No, I mean, the feeling amongst most, and I talk to a lot of people, the journalists, the producers, but just being in Kyiv, he's a wartime leader. He's exactly the response I get is exactly what we need for this situation. And whether that translates to afterwards, when whatever the conclusion is, whether he stays on, I don't know. Look at Churchill; he got us through World War II, and the next election he was out. But publicly, there's very little dissent. If you stretch and look deep, you will find, as you said about Bakhmut, whether it was right, whether it was wrong. But I think the general feeling is there he has a public backing at the moment.
I mean, have you sensed any concern? I mean, you saw these recent leaks that came out of America that have been all over social media and being promoted on various chat rooms. And they suggest a less optimistic possibility of offence. There are doubts whether the Ukrainians could potentially get to the Sea of Azov, for example. There are issues with air defence that seem to have come out. And this is, of course, all in January. But has any of that impacted people's morale, or are they still confident of winning?
No, I mean, I think initially they are still really downplaying it. The government spokesman a few days ago put out a statement saying that there are 5 people who know the exact offensive plan. It certainly wasn't put into any document that would release them 5 people. But of course, it's natural concern if you're building up an offensive and you want the element of surprise. The last thing anybody really wants to see is details of logistics or weapon supplies or what their capabilities of. It's done some damage, but I think knowing their versatility, they're capable of changing and twisting it enough to keep on the front foot.
So are you thinking that they could lose morale, perhaps? How are the Ukrainians going to suffer another winter like this one?
Well, look, I think the potential danger is that they left the fighting season kind of ended October, November when the big chill comes, when it gets too cold to really advance. They left it on a high. They'd taken and pushed them out of Kharkiv. They pushed them out of Kherson. So there was a great sense of optimism then. Then the winter sets in and it becomes this static artillery war, which, massive casualties on both sides, it has to be said. But I think people have gotten so used to it in the West, in Kyiv, that, I'm slightly concerned about the losses when you go on the offensive, when you restart, when you try and get the forward foot together. You do take high casualties, and there's a slight concern that they may not be prepared for the losses that they're likely to incur.
So, Paul, you are now a leading expert on journalist safety in that country. You've been to Bakhmut, you've been around the front line, you're taking photographs, and you've been studying and then putting that information back into young Ukrainian journalists. What is it like as a journalist there? Do you find it very difficult to get access, for example? Is it incredibly dangerous? How's it different from Syria for you operating on the ground or for others?
Okay, look, Syria was constantly dangerous because the regime were always out looking for us. We were dodging the regime all the time. However, with Ukraine, if you go to the front line, when you go to the front line, you do it 2 ways. If you go with the military, you are a target because this is heavy-duty, full-on, total war situation. Artillery, drones, rocket attacks, you by default become a target. And I've been with the military. It's reassuring because you get their knowledge of the ground. It's not that reassuring when you are the target all the time. Or you go separately and you work your way around, in which case you lose the advantages of being with the military, which are do not go down that road now. It's so fluid on the ground, certainly around in Donbass, around Bakhmut. Many people, the 2 English aid workers went down the road. They were killed. They went down the road. I've been down 2 hours before. And that's how fluid it is. It's the most dangerous conflict I've covered, I think, as far as, just the all-out assault on positions when they happen. These automatic bombs they use, which are fuel air, which is so out your mouth. particularly horrendous. And the other day, when I was traveling in Kramatorsk, I heard a crack above, an explosion above, and we got caught in a cluster munition strike. So the shell goes off in the end, and all these bomblets come down and land every 15, 20